Hello, 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 hello.
Hello, am I there?
It sounds like you are here, brother Dave.
Oh, hey, you
What's
must be
go
Dave.
what's going on? I know, two Daves. All we need
You want
is
a picture?
we just need Cheech and Chong to show up and a big aloha and mahalo, my brother. Welcome back, David. Great to have you on the show again with us.
Oh, good. Great to be here, man. Aloha. Yeah.
And first, if you can, because we've been talking to people throughout the pandemic, and it's great to catch up with you at this point in it. Let's hope we've passed the big part, but who knows as this has rolled. But walk us back through your personal experience, and if you can, share any wild or intense stories of either how it first impacted you or overall any memorable episodes. They could be good or bad, but compelling stories from your personal pandemic journey. And it can start with maybe how, if there was any dramatic way it shut things down for you.
Well, we had a brand new album coming out in I was supposed to be out, I believe it was in April of 2020.
Okay. Bad timing there.
Right as right as it should happen, immediately as everything shut down.
All right.
And so and it went and came out and was a little hard to promote by Zoom, but we did the best we could. you know
Sure.
and you know and and so about now is when we're finally getting out there to finally let everybody see what's going on. And so it's pretty good, although actually I just got sent back home. Okay, because three guys in our crew and one of our band members came down with COVID right in the middle of a tour. And
Wow.
so they were hibernating in their rooms at the hotel, and we sent everybody else home so
And
that they wouldn't be sitting in hotels.
did you ever get COVID so far?
And when I got home, I tested negative, and the next morning I tested positive.
Wow. So just now, just recently, is your first
Yeah,
time getting it during the whole thing.
during the whole thing. Just now I managed to avoid it, but I never got any I never really got any symptoms at all.
God bless you. And you are, I mean, and you look fantastic, and you're not a lady, so I can feel comfortable, more comfortable talking
We
about
can
your
talk
age. Tell
about
people how old you are.
I just turned 84.
Unbelievable. And you're dealing with that COVID like it was nothing, huh? Is what you're saying. Your personal
Well, kind
experience.
of, yeah. And then within 2 days, maybe 3 days, I tested negative again,
Psh,
and
unreal.
went back out and caught the last gig of the tour that I left. So,
That is so much part of the kind of stories that you hear. They're all over the map.
meanwhile, my wife is just getting over it. So, that's what a terrible. I gave it to her.
And she got a more of a reaction than you, it sounds like.
Yeah, poor baby.
Unfortunate.
But
Unfortunate.
she's about over it right about now. So,
That's good to hear. Well, for a lot of people, it's a name that has been part of their lives for a very, very long time. Jefferson Starship, and what's interesting is you've got this fascinating story that actually your personal story really helps explain a question that a lot of classic rock fans have. And while you've told it many times, I'm sure you understand a lot of people listening now have never heard the story and would be really informed by it. So if you could tell the folks the really cool tale of how you, vet of Bay Area Rockers Quicksilver Messenger Service, and then vet of a few times in the Slammer too for Reefer, you ended up being part of both Jefferson Airplane at that critical point where it would soon transition to Jefferson Starship, complete with Paul Kantner's Blows Against the Empire album in between.
right, exactly. Well, I found myself in the Quicksilver Messenger Service that I I after Dino Valenti got in the band, and it kind of turned into Dino's backup band, and John Cipollina left, and the manager left, Nicky Hopkins left, and I kind of just stayed there because uh, I don't like to leave people in the lurch, kind of like that. And I said, and I thought to myself, but if I'm not doing anything within a year, if I don't feel like I'm doing anything useful here,
Hmm.
I'll I think I'll just leave. And so I turned up. It turned out right about at the just about at the end of the year. All of a sudden, we were on a trip to Hawaii.
Wow.
To Hawaii, and somehow somebody had packed some firearms in our baggage. And our road manager walked through the metal detector, which was right before the plane in those days, with bullets in his pocket.
Oh, this is in L.A.
It was in San
San
Francisco,
Francisco. Right.
and, and as soon as it went off, he went running away,
Oh.
running away, and had a bag of pot in his pants, and he's emptying it in the air as he's running down there, and the air marshals tackled him, and I ended up getting busted
Oh.
because he had all the baggage claim tags, and they pulled us all off the plane and searched our bags, and they found a small amount of marijuana in my thing, and off I went in front of my little girl. That was terrible.
Unbelievable.
And while and then I went on trial, and they actually put me in jail for a 60-day sentence.
In San Francisco.
This was, well, it's the airport is actually in San Mateo County, so it was
San Mateo County Jail or something.
the San Mateo County Jail for 45 days, and I took that to be a sign that every time I got busted, it was a good thing. I'm not doing something. So I said, "Look, you've got me playing organ most of the time in this band." He said, "And I'm not really an organ player. I can fake it pretty good, but since I'm going to be here, you're going to have to keep on playing. Why don't you get yourself a real organ player?" And so they did. And so I ended up just helping Mickey Hart, Grateful Dead's drummer, do his first solo album, and there was a whole bunch of interband things going on at that time when David Crosby was over at Wally Heider's studio, and everybody from the Dead and me and and Graham Nash, and we'll all be there jamming and jamming and jamming, and so I was reestablished my friendship with Paul Kantner, which actually never ended. Because I was buddies with him before there was while we were just still folk singers and nobody thought about it being in a rock band or anything. And so I heard we were doing this song on Mickey's album, and I heard maybe Paul and Grace could do some harmonies on this because I was singing the lead, and so I brought them in, and Grace had a good time. She played piano. And right about that time also, Marty Balin left the Jefferson Airplane. And so I got asked to join Jefferson Airplane to replace Marty Balin. And so the very last the last tour of the original Airplane, as original as it gets anyway.
You were in.
I was in.
Was Jack Cassidy and Yorma Kalkinen still in the band?
Jack and Yorma and Papa John Creech and John Barbada, who had come in as the new drummer.
And was that time that you described that fascinating story with Grace, was that the first time when you brought them in for that session, was that the first time you ever met her?
Oh, no.
What was it? Do you remember the first time? Because she's such a memorable cat. We just had Yorma on. He was sharing some great stories. I'm just curious what you might have.
Oh no, I met her because we shared bills quite often,
Oh yeah, right. With Quicksilver, you're saying, in the Airplane,
Quicksilver.
you would have run into her many times. That's true.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm doing really well. Anyway, Paul was kind of one of my best friends, and was one of my best friends in the world anyway. And so and he was living with her, so of course I'd visit Paul and them quite often.
I get it now. I forgot. I can remember from the Dead Bass. That's a helpful book. In the Dead Bass, it basically inadvertently, by showing the history of all those Grateful Dead shows and who they were with, you learn that they both shared the bill with the Airplane and Quicksilver more than anybody, and Quicksilver also and the Airplane shared it. So okay, so continue your great tour.
There's tons of stories there.
yeah. So continue. You're at a great point. So that's the final tour you took us to.
Yeah, and then and just before that, Paul had released "Blows Against the Empire," which I did some singing on also.
So it was
So
concurrent. So blows. Okay, so I thought the next thing in the story was that, but really the way the story
no,
works is it.
that came out already.
Okay, so
That
that
came
had
out
come out
already.
like before the live record that documented that final tour. 30.
Somehow, yeah, he couldn't. He had this thing, and he in his brain, and apparently none of the Jefferson Airplane would couldn't get the Jefferson Airplane to put it on a Jefferson Airplane album, so he made it himself. Although he did have Yorma and Jack playing on it all over the place, especially Jack. There's tons of Jack Cassidy on Blows Against the Empire.
Wow, and you're on that, and
I'm singing on it. I think Graham Nash ended up kind of mixing it mostly, and then there's a lot of David Crosby on there too.
and that's the name. Explain how that's where, because that's the other critical part. So
To explain who was on the album, he put up a little thing. There was a little note on the album that said Jefferson Starship Crew, and then listed everybody that played on it.
all right, and so it was like
So
that's
that's where the first Jefferson Starship, the name showed up.
fascinating how that occurs. So there you go. That's the story then, and then from there, it's
From
used.
there, after the tour was over, we put together. There's a live album called 30 Seconds Over Winterland
Right.
that I'm on, and so Paul and Grace and I started hanging out, and we had a bunch of songs. I had some songs, some changes and things that I'd written, and Paul had some stuff he was working on. Grace had some things. And so Paul owed Paul owed a record to RCA, and so we made that one to start with.
Firefly.
While we were on hiatus. That was Baron von Tollbooth and the
Oh,
Chrome Nun,
got it. Got it. Okay.
right? Which is Bill is Paul Kantner, Grace Lake, David Freiberg, I believe.
Right. It's not quite the. It's not the first Starship record, right?
No, no, no. It had a bunch of songs on it though that were a lot of fun for us. And then Grace also owed them a solo album. And she did one called Manhole, which was we did it pretty much the same way, just the three of us. But she had this long thing called the soundtrack from the movie Manhole, which of course there was no movie Manhole,
Right.
but he had the soundtrack, and it was in Spanish,
Wild.
and it had Ron Carter playing bass on it
Oh
too,
my
which is great.
gosh. Wow. So many cool
And
aspects
the
to that.
London Philharmonic Symphony, the players from the London Philharmonic
It was so eclectic.
orchestrated. It was all orchestrated and everything. And I had a song on there called "It's Only Music," and that Grace wasn't even on. So it's
And had you guys already decided that it was going to happen yet when all these little solo sort of projects or no?
well, we were the way I remember it is we kind of were waiting for Yorma and Jack to want to go out and do a Jefferson Airplane thing. We never didn't really think that it was over, but it was just something to do. But they were so into Hot Tuna that they were never going to come back, and we finally figured that out. So he said, "Well, we better promote what we've just done. What are we going to do?" And so, what are we going to call it? But Jefferson Starship,
Right.
to be kind of obvious.
And it just
And
made sense, you're
there
saying.
you go.
All right, and that kind of encapsulates it. And then from that point, they begin releasing records under that moniker. The Hot Tuna
Right.
duo of Jack and Yorma goes off like that. You
Well, there's
guys,
other coincidences, like one of Paul's old folk friends, Jack Trailer, was teaching social studies, I think, in the Sacramento High School, and one of his students played guitar in his band. His name was Craig Chiquiso.
oh wow,
We brought him down, and he played a few tracks on some of these things, along with Jerry Garcia and everybody else that we had playing on those two records.
right.
And so,
And then he joins the band and becomes a part of the sound of
and
the
he ends up joining the band. Yeah,
right. And so many wailing. That first one, Ride the Tide. I mean, there are so many songs that you're
right,
associated
Tiger,
with
right.
these guys. That's the very first one. What a wailing. I mean, that is absolutely one of my very, very, very favorite Jefferson Starship songs. And is there, when you think of that song and the fact that I mentioned it, and is there any story of like when you remember them first playing a little bit of it to you, or anything cool about a gig you did at one time, or maybe doing it on TV somewhere, or anybody else's reaction
Oh,
working on it? Just
oh, we
something
did
that,
that. We did that song to death in Jefferson Starship. I mean, that was our opening song a lot,
so that's
a
what
lot.
opened the
And we
show.
still we still do it today.
Sure, sure. It's part. It's got to be. That's. I
It's
mean,
kind
these.
of missing something without Paul being in it, but but we have to do it. We just love it.
Yeah, these are the epic songs that are such a big
Sure.
big part of it. And on the note of those other songs like Red Octopus, boy, you guys scored with miracles. Now that's a song that was everywhere for so long on the radio. Do you remember? I mean, and that's one of those. I still remember somebody, this woman I knew who worked for my mom when I was a kid, Janet. That was like the song at their wedding. I mean, I'm just so many different things are attached to that song, Miracles, for so many people probably listening. Is there any story you remember of when that thing first emerged, or playing it any one time that sticks out where it really gave you satisfaction, or was a big moment when the song was
Well,
just wailing on the charts?
the thing that I really remember about it is we practiced it. We were practiced the things on Red Octopus for, I don't know, a month or two before we went into the studio to do the basic tracks. And when we were doing the basic tracks, we hadn't really figured out what the intro was, and we were just goofing around while we were getting the sounds, getting the drum sounds and the instrument sounds. And I was goofing around on the organ, and I came up with the blah, tweet, 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 tweet,
Right.
that little
The
organ,
riff.
and so that didn't show up until the actual first till the night we were actually recording it. So
Wow,
I don't
so
know.
that's
That
a
was
memory
that was it.
that you've got. Any particular? Didn't you do like some big that year, like Central Park? Wasn't that year, or one of those huge kind of?
I'm pretty sure we do it the first year.
What's one of the big outdoor ones that sticks
No,
out?
we did do Central Park. That was pretty good. Yeah, I think the radio station that sponsored it ended up having to pay a lot for damages to people climbing up things
Oh, in New York at the
in New
trees and
York.
stuff,
Yeah,
right in the park.
yeah.
Yeah, I believe it. And that's that whole era. I think of when I think of that era, I also think of a guy who probably played a huge role in getting a lot of gigs like that together for the group. And so many people during the pandemic were telling us the most incredible firsthand stories of being on tour with him, and with Mick Jagger in Indonesia. We were hearing from Joe Satriani about his adventures with Bill Graham. We were hearing
Oh yeah.
stories
Well,
from guys like Pat Simmons from the Doobie Brothers, and from Tower of Power, Emilio Castillo. So yourself, if you can, was there a first time you met Bill, or just some cool way that you can describe this incredible character for folks and the way he influenced the career, your career, and the airplane?
oh, he got all of us, and he actually was Jefferson Airplane's manager for a while. But that didn't work because he wanted him to work too hard, I think.
Describe him for folks. This guy, Bill
Oh,
Graham, legendary concert promoter. Tell people what was he like?
he was a brilliant organizer, but he wouldn't handle any bull from anybody. He would he had a temper, and he would blow up, and he'd be loving you one moment and yelling at you the next.
What's a moment you can remember? What's an early Bill moment that just, because everybody, they got to stick out. There's got to be Bill moments that are very easy for you to remember, that are dramatic.
Oh, quite a few. I mean, there's one where we were doing a benefit for the Haight-Ashbury Medical Clinic, I believe, and and Big Brother and the holding company was supposed to be there, but they were late, and so they made us go on early,
Okay.
and we weren't supposed to go on for another hour and a half, and it was taking us a little while. Quicksilver were never that together anyway, and getting it together to play. And he started yelling at me. I said, "Wait a minute, man! Don't yell at me. I'm not even supposed to be here yet."
How about his
But he'd have to yell at somebody.
how about his
And
day on the
then
grid?
in the next breath, he'd have his arm around my shoulder and say, David, he says, "I know you guys aren't going to take care of your money, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to have an old rock and roll players home, so don't worry. I'll take care of you in your old age." I said, "Oh, Bill, that's so nice of you, man."
God
But
bless. God bless.
And
And here
then he went and got on that helicopter, man.
right, and he went way before you, as it
Yeah, way
turned
before.
out. And
Yeah.
looking back at like his day on the greens, those big shows he would do at the stadium in Oakland. Did you ever? I remember the airplane was supposed to play one of those in like I forget the year. It was '76, I think, and you were supposed to do it, and then Boz Scaggs and Tower of Power replaced you guys. Do you remember why?
No,
And do you remember ever playing that gig?
I don't know. What in Oakland?
Yeah, the stadium in the big state day on the green. Or did you go to any of his day on the greens that he would do? Those
Oh,
famous.
I went to a few of them. I don't remember. I don't think I ever played one.
Okay, yeah, well that makes sense. It totally does. And then also before we wrap it up with you, when you think of Grace, she has a relationship with like what is your relationship with her these days? And explain the way that she has contributed to the band and has a strong positive opinion of the woman who has taken her role.
Oh yeah. Well, when Paul passed away, and we were at his funeral actually, his family, Grace wasn't there, but his family said, it'd be really nice if you guys kept on playing, and because that's basically who the band is. It's everybody that was in the band when Paul passed away.
Hmm.
And we said, sure, we'd love to do that. And it ended up that actually Grace actually was the person who was the only one left from Jefferson Starship Incorporated, and she said, please, well, and she licensed us to do it.
So she plays a business role sort of in the
She,
whole thing.
well, kind of, she's just giving us the legal the legal acceptance to be able to do it. Although we've been doing, all of us have been playing in Jefferson. I mean, our keyboard player Chris Smith been playing with Paul since 1998, and I mean, so that's like
Yeah,
20
a long
that's
time.
24 years now, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, a long time. But didn't I remember last time we talked? Wasn't she going to write like lyrics for that new record or something like that?
She did. Oh, Kathy was hanging out with China, that Paul and Grace's kid, China Kantner Eisler,
Yep.
uh, uh, was hanging out with Kathy. They've been really good friends, and because she's like my goddaughter almost, although that was her name originally, but as a joke. But uh, um, we're hanging out, and I think it was 2017 when there were big women's marches in Washington, and they were watching them on television, and Kathy said, we got to watch this with Grace. So she went downstairs and was watching it with Grace. She said, this is great. Grace was loving it because it's much kind of like the 60s again, and it's about the same bullshit.
That sounds just like her too.
you know
That's a great
and
quote.
Kathy said, we ought to write it. We ought to write a women's power anthem. And Grace said, that'd be a great idea. And I said, but when Kathy said, well, would you want to write it with us? And she says, that might not be a bad idea. And so
Wow.
a, a, a month or so later, there's an envelope arrives at Kathy's house with a whole bunch of lyrics
From Grace
saying,
Slick.
use whatever you want, throw the rest away.
And the way, and just to make sure I got the story right, and the way that Grace and Kathy, and what's Kathy's last name, by the way?
Kathy Richardson. Don't
Richardson,
forget
right. The
that.
way that
Yeah.
Kathy Richardson, the current vocalist for the Starship, and Grace got to know each other was through China Kantner, the daughter. Like
Yeah.
the daughter
Yeah.
knew Kathy, and that brought Kathy to Grace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's, well, when the Jefferson Airplane got their Lifetime Achievement Award, when it came time from the Grammys, from the Recording Academy, Grace asked Kathy
To do the
to
part.
to sing on the telecast.
Yeah, that's an interesting
I believe
video.
I believe Pink had recorded White Rabbit, and the Recording Academy people always want to take somebody with a recent hit.
Yeah, yeah.
But Grace insisted it had to be Kathy,
Well, that's
and
a great. And what's the name of that tune?
it's about time.
Let's play that as our outro song since it's on the new record. And
Fantastic.
right, is that a good choice or what? Am I reading it?
It's a great choice.
Fits in with what folks can relate to and touches what current events and no question about it with things the way the country's moved since then. No doubt that it would still be a good girl power sort of deal. And great to have you back. And I love all the different storytelling. You kind of bridged a whole bunch of stuff for us today with the storytelling. It's a great David Freiberg, multi-instrumentalist from Jefferson Starship, and of course his history in the Quicksilver messenger service. And I hope you had fun today. Was this a good experience for you kicking back here with us on the show?
I did indeed, Dave. Yes, a whole lot.
Awesome.
Always enjoy reliving the past.
Yeah, well, these are fun ones. And giving you a hug, a high five, hoping that the traveling safe here works out, and maybe we'll get to hook up while you're in town. But be safe, my brother, and a huge mahalo from all of us.
Okay, aloha.
Take care, Bo. Take care.